Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the question and answer session. We have several questions from participants. I will read the question and then for the keynote speaker, please be prepared. Okay, the first question is from Tribuana Unsud. It is addressed to Prof. Atwin. Prof. Atwin, word female superheroes and even Indonesian superheroes are depicted both exposing physical strength and curves. It seems that male gaze still colors the way they are represented. How do you see? How do you see this in terms of feminist perspective? Okay, Prof. Atwin, please.
Thank you, Ibu Tribuana, for the question. But I have also read the second question, which I think I can answer all together if it is okay with you. From Linda Fatmawati.
Okay, it is okay. If you can simultaneously answer both questions, please.
Okay, thank you. So let me just read the question first. So from Linda, Ibu Linda, thank you. While the female superheroes are being sexualized, it is the agenda of masculine domination to emphasize the agenda. Is it the agenda of masculine domination to emphasize the agenda of normative gender and sexuality through films and comics? Those I think go hand in hand with the question from Ibu Tribuana, and I would answer the second question from Ibu Linda later. But yes, in general, let me just read one of the research that has gone very in depth into that, which is that there is a research from Monica Miller, Jessica Roach, and Tatiana Kaplan saying that in 147 superheroes in 80 movies, male heroes appeared more frequently than female heroes. That's one. Females were more likely to work in a group while males were more likely to work alone. Males were more powerful, muscular, violent, and evil, while men more attractive, thin, sexy, seductive, innocent, afraid, and helpless. Compared to males, females' clothes, both costume and non-costume, were more revealing on both the upper and lower bodies, although both generally frequently have used a weapon, and etc. So, yeah, that is the problem. In general, the women in movies in general, even in movies, not just superhero movies, women are depicted to be more revealing, to be, when they have strength, they would also compensate that with some sexiness and seductiveness, you know, some curves even. And well, yeah, the camera is still like Laura movies, that is still masculine, if not male. So that's what I would say, that's in my feminist perspective. And I think there are lots of research by feminists, both male and female, talking about how the movies, both, I mean, not just superhero movie again, that actually depict women as that the same, like they have to be sexy and innocent, more rippling. They don't really, and women don't really, they are not really described to be talking to each other. For example, there's this Bechdel test that actually tests whether a movie can be regarded as having just gender sensitivity. The test only consists of 3 questions. One, is there a leading with female character? And second, is the leading character, does the leading character have a line? And then, sorry, is there a leading character with a line? That's the question 1. Is there, number 2, is there any other, are they talking to each other? You know, female to female characters, are they talking to each other? And the third question is, are they talking about things other than men? So obviously the films in general, the culture of movies are still very much of male, of masculine perhaps. So, and yes, the female superheroes are being sexualized, and it is also part of all this, I mean, in general, because the ideology is still very patriarchal. The impact is the sexualization of leading characters, and superhero genre kind of give that room for for costumes. And when costume is involved, then people begin to draw this sexualized character. And I have just browsed several internet pages, and I found a lot of sexy interpretation of female superheroes. Even in the original version, female superheroes are depicted as revealing and sexy. This interpretation of superheroes can be even more sexualized. If I may just show a little bit of my I just want to show this. If you see this, this is one of the things that they do. They put here, this is Putri Bintang in a very sexualized depiction. This is like the interpretation of the comic book that is actually, this is already very sexual, and then they put it in a more sexualized way. Even this one is in Sri Asih the Bumi Langit. They put this like when you're going to Miss Universe pageant, you put like height and weight. This is the height and weight, and she's got quite large breast, which is unlike, I mean, I would argue that Indonesian women don't actually have that kind of large breast. That's I think the sexualized portrayal is an issue that has been discussed by a lot of feminists. And the question from Ibu Linda, can we say almost all forms of male superhero depicted hegemonic masculinity? No. The idea, well, the only perhaps compared to Batman, Superman, I would still watch Spider-Man. I've been telling my sons when they were little that if they should like superhero, that should be Spider-Man. Why? Because Spider-Man is vulnerable. Spider-Man is kind of human and in a quirky way. He tried to be very heroic, boom, and then he fell down, and which is something that we can identify. So, and watching a Spider-Man movie, there is always this connection with this friendship. There is an issue of having a girlfriend and falling in love, and vulnerability is there whilst he has this power. So not all, but we're still having a long way to go, I think. So thank you for the questions.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Altwin. Hopefully it does answer Bu Linda and Bu Tribuana's question. My superhero is also pizza derman, yeah, with extra cheese. Okay, next question from Pak Condro, Muhammadiyah University Purwokerto. Okay, it is addressed to Pak Zain. Dear Dr. Zain, I am Condro from Translation Research Center, Universitas Muhammadiyah Purwokerto, Indonesia. In Indonesian context, we also have the same problem in terms of the lack of professional translator. Therefore, the recent focus is how to develop students' translation competence in tertiary education level. What do you think the best way to develop student translation competence? Okay, Pak Zain, please.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I read that question, and I think I did answer that question in the chat section. Well, I guess it would be by developing translation courses and programs which are specifically tailored to meet the actual demands and the actual expectations of the local translation industry. I think that would be the point of departure. Yeah, very short and simple answer to that.
Okay, the next question still addressed to Pak Zain from Yulia Widiana, Universitas Katolik Widya Mandala, Surabaya. Dear Dr. Zain, it is a pleasure to see you again here. Okay. What do you think of the best way to translate and adapt the characteristics of American superheroes into the characteristic of the local culture heroes to meet the need of character building among children and youth? Okay, that's the question from Yuli Widiana.
Yuli. Okay, hello Yuli. Nice to hear from you again. Yeah, I think it's good to learn and adapt from other cultures. And I think in relation to adapting the concept of superheroes from let's say the American culture and adapt it into the local Indonesian culture, for example, I think what's important is that this has to be done creatively and meticulously, and taking into account the cultural background of the society, of the local society, the cultural values and cultural sensitivities of the local culture. Because I recall that there was a series of animated cartoons in the Middle East quite a while ago, which was based on the concept of superheroes. But for some reason, the cartoon received great criticism. So it was criticized by the public because it was not sensitive to the cultural values of the people. Yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Pak Zain. Perhaps this is the time for the participant. You can raise your hand if you want to ask a question to our keynote speakers. Okay, please raise your hand if you want to address a question. Don't forget to mention your name and also your institution. No one raise their hand? You want to ask? Anyone? So, okay, here are some questions from, okay, from Rizky Mulya Iskandar. It is addressed to Liam, yeah, okay. Dear Professor Liam Burke, I'm glad to meet you and listen presentation from you. Okay, I want to ask something. Superhero that was created by human from a nation are having some meaning to make specified country has a good image from the other. Perhaps maybe, do you get the question, Liam?
I'm not 100% sure I follow, but is it relating to trying to represent a positive face for the country that's adapting the superhero? That might be my interpretation of it. So, for instance, if one were to create a superhero that was specific or unique to a particular region or country, in terms of this idea of a good image, is it about presenting a kind of a positive face internationally for with that character? And I mean, that's something that's sort of, I do recommend that everyone look at Jason Dittmer's book, where he does look at nationalist superheroes as a subgenre. And he is skeptical about this idea of nationalist superheroes, particularly those that were created by US creators, because they tended to, in the past, kind of suggest a false equivalency between various nations. They would have things like the contest of champions, where they would have every country represented by a superhero, but these superheroes never appeared again. They would, have maybe one or two panels in a particular issue, and they were never seen again. They certainly were never the basis of their own comic. So I think where that energy needs to come from is from those creators working around the world. And one of the things I kind of wanted to point to was, in a digital world, the boundaries between regions and countries and so on have narrowed somewhat. And it is possible that a creator in a particular region who may have struggled in the past to have their work seen on a kind of on a global stage now has that ability. So that's why I tended to point to the Irish and Australian examples, because they're the ones I'm most familiar with. But prior to Garth Ennis, there was no Irish comic book creator that ever had an international profile, certainly never worked for a major US publisher like Marvel or DC Comics. But in recent years, there's been dozens that have worked on the highest profile superhero comics. And they've used that platform to not just work on Spider-Man or Batman or Wonder Woman, but also to sort of correct ever so subtly some of those sort of the depictions of those regions. So to again point to Garth Ennis, who has quite a big international profile at the moment, because he created both Preacher and The Boys, both which have been adapted into TV shows. He has populated his US set books with Irish characters, whether it's the vampire Cassidy in Preacher, or whether it's John Constantine's love interest Cassidy. So and in doing so, he's offered perhaps not necessarily a unblemished view of Ireland, but perhaps a more authentic view of Ireland. And I've also seen that in recent years with Australian creators as well. So creators like Nicholas Scott, who's an artist, and Tom Taylor, who's a writer. When Tom Taylor had a recent story arc of Suicide Squad that was set in Australia, and he revisited the character of Captain Boomerang, who takes the indigenous tool, which is the boomerang, and uses it to super villainous effect. And he sort of reclaims that character for Australians and sort of challenges what has been, quite a stereotypical, jokey, gimmicky character in the past, and gives the characterization a depth and detail that again isn't, this sort of very rose-tinted version of Australia, but perhaps just a little bit more nuanced and detailed than a US creator who could only Google, certain details could in the past. So really, what I'm trying to point to is this wider shift, and whereby these very US icons, US in the sense that they have a lot of, they are often clad in the stars and stripes, but also created by American creators, are now having a more diverse array of voices, shape them on page and screen, and that has, I think, redressed, however subtly, some of the imbalances of the past. I don't know if that answers the question. I hope it does.
Okay, thank you for the answers. Okay, we also have another question from Sophie Mahmuda from Jenderal Sudirman University. Dear Dr. Liam, talking about cultural identity represented by superheroes, how would you relate to Indonesian context? Wait. Or would you relate to Indonesian context? Okay. How would you relate to Indonesian context where cultural identities are very complex to define?
That's a really good question. And I would say that around the globe, cultural identities are very complex, hard to define. When I think about national identity, I'm very skeptical about it. And I hope that came across in the presentation. These are very much imagined communities in that kind of Benedict Anderson way. There's a sort of a hegemonic national identity. So Australia isn't all people living in the outback, and Ireland isn't all slightly drunk people living on farms. That's certainly a component, but it's much more diverse and complex than that. So how do you avoid, the going for those simplistic, readily identifiable stereotypes? And again, I'll point to an Australian example because I think it can be extrapolated kind of across many regions and countries, where again, Tom Taylor, a Melbourne writer, artist, recently took over Suicide Squad, which is a long-standing DC Comics book, and he includes the character of Captain Boomerang, who is this kind of gimmicky, jokey stereotype, but he also included a character called Thylacine, and Thylacine is an Indigenous Australian woman. So what he's doing is he's still keeping the long-standing Australian character that is, has 20, 30, 40 years of comic book publication history. He's providing him with a nuanced backstory that is with details specific to the Australian experience. But beyond that, he is almost sort of balancing that with this, a hero who is a woman and a hero who is Indigenous, to point to the diverse array of experiences and the multiple cultural identities that sometimes get ignored in more hegemonic presentations of Australia. And I think, again, it's that approach of not saying that think about nationalist superheroes as, one type, because that becomes very reductive. And that's what but rather thinking about having characters come from multiple regions and multiple cultural identities within those regions as well. I think that's the way to sort of resolve or reconcile some of the tensions and not fall into some of the traps, particularly the stereotypical traps of past presentations of international or national superheroes.
Okay. Okay, here also a question from Novi, University of Muhammadiyah, Malang. Dear Prof. Liam, how the national ideology or identities, even political issues, could affect the making of superhero idea in particular region or country, as the local identity must be inserted to create the origin story? Okay, please.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question as well. So, and it's kind of one of the things I wanted to was trying to get to in my presentation is how do you reconcile a very familiar but very sort of rigid set of genre conventions around the superhero to reflect local interests, local politics, and local specificities. So, for instance, a character I briefly alluded to in the presentation was the Irish character Glimmerman. And Glimmerman is very much the Irish Captain America in that he wears the flag and he was a World War II set character. But there's a very specific sequence early in that character's origin story where he is given the opportunity to avail of a super soldier serum that has been provided by the Americans, and he refuses that because he doesn't want to sort of, as he describes in the book, to be tainted by kind of an outside influence. And also Ireland is in this sort of unusual position for World War II set comics because Ireland was neutral during the Second World War. And so there's a team of superheroes called the League of Volunteers that have to sort of, try and navigate that tension between the depictions of World War II as we associate them in superhero comics with Captain America punching Hitler out, with a country that was, or historically, neutral during the Second World War. And so this is both tricky for comic book creators, but also it provides for interesting stories that otherwise wouldn't be told. So for instance, I interviewed on a number of occasions Ryan Griffin. Ryan Griffin is an Indigenous Australian writer who was the creator of Clever Man, which is that TV series and comic book that I discussed. And he discussed how in the writer's room, a writer might suggest, oh, can we do this with the characters because it's really good for the superhero genre? And he would say that cultural sensitivities, particularly around Australia's First Nations people, mean that you can't do that. And they'd have to come up with a solution that would reconcile the conventions of the genre and all the excitement that we associate with that, while also being culturally sensitive. And the net result of that was a character, Clever Man, and a world of Clever Man that was distinct from anything that would have been created by an overseas creator. So it does allow for kind of unique moments of creation.
Prof. Aquarini or Pak Zain, you want to add any comment to what Liam has already explained to the question addressed by the participant?
No, I think that was a good answer. Nothing to add.
Okay. What about Prof. Admin?
Yeah, I think Prof. Liam has answered all the things. He has ticked all the questions. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that we still have some. Okay, from Yuli Widiana. Universitas Katolik Widya Mandala, Surabaya. Prof. Liam, could you define what superhero is? Is it defined based on physically extraordinary power or more about the extraordinary characteristic? Thus, the definition and the image of superheroes are different in relation to culture point of view. I think this question is also, makes sense if Prof. Adwin could also answer this question. Okay, okay, Liam, you go first.
Okay, yeah, the definition of a superhero is contested. Superman is often credited or cited as the first superhero in the classical model, but to identify Superman as the first superhero would ignore proto-superheroes like the Phantom, Mandrake, Doc Savage, and so on. But generally across the scholarship, there are three points that are the working definition of a superhero. First of all, they need extraordinary abilities. Now that could be all the array of powers that Wonder Woman and Superman have, or it could just be a heightened intellect, or like Tony Stark, who is Iron Man, or Bruce Wayne, who is Batman, but some sort of extra ability. The second thing then relates to altruism. They have to actually want to help, and it has to be kind of a self-sacrificing action. So a lot of people have pointed to Spider-Man, how Spider-Man will sacrifice his relationships in order to do the better thing, miss out on a date with Mary Jane in order to save the city from Dr. Octopus. And then the third point, which I think is the real point of distinction between superheroes and other heroic types, is they tend to have a dual identity and some form of transformation. So when Luke Skywalker or James Bond wake up in the morning or go to bed at night, they're still Luke Skywalker and James Bond. The difference is, the dual identities of Clark Kent, Superman, Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, and so on. And that is what distinguishes superheroes from other heroic types and makes them relatable, because we enjoy the excitement of their high-flying heroics, but we also tend to relate to their civilian identities. So that's generally how I would define a superhero.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think Professor Liam has answered all the most important, the key points of what counts as superhero. What I would talk also about. Sorry, my what's this? Okay, now can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
What I would also suggest is that there is this kind of superhero that really, for example, Diana is while she has superhero, she's working on it. Unlike Supergirl, it's given. The power is given. What I like about Wonder Woman is that to be wonderful, to be this Wonder Woman, she has to work, she has practice. And in the late in 2016 Wonder Woman, for example, we see that she is in training. It makes superhero more human in a way that I can identify. It makes us think that everybody can be a superhero, and that's, I think, the collaborative and collective value that I would underline in what Coogan says as the superheroine. It's not individualistic. It's not just I'm going to save the world. It's just saying I'm going to save the world if you back me up, And when she's finishes like crossing everybody, we did it. It's not like Superman flying up to the orbit and say, wow, I did it. It's so different. So I think that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Adwin. Okay, it seems that Liam got almost the whole question. Yeah. Okay, there's another question from participants. Yeah. Dear Dr. Liam, my name is Rizky from Universitas Jenderal Sudirman. I want to ask about the superheroes in the form of action figures. I myself also have an action figures, yeah, and I like Hulk. Many fictional characters like superhero are having their own action figures. Is there any identity or cultural or any other which represented by the superhero if it is in action figure form? Because in comics, we can see the identity by the visual like the surrounding of the place. Okay, please, what about action figures?
I mean, action figures are really interesting. And I think this question points to one of the reasons why superheroes are perhaps so popular and transcendent today. On an industrial level, in terms of who owns superheroes, Marvel Comics is owned by Disney, Warner Media owned DC Comics, Netflix just bought Miller World. So these large media conglomerates, at least in the West, really are gravitating towards superheroes in recent years because they're very visual. And so they can be spread readily across multiple media platforms. You don't just get a movie or a TV show, but you can get a movie, a TV show, a Happy Meal, a theme park ride, and of course, an action figure. And so, you know, they are very readily identifiable by their iconography. And their coloring as well is quite distinct, you know, different variations of primary colors. So superheroes lend themselves readily to action figures in a way that, you know, a more literary character couldn't. It's hard to imagine a theme park ride of, you know, Oliver Twist, or, you know, but Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, you know, it's the insignia, it's the logo. Even a very poorly created Hulk is recognizably Hulk because it's the big muscles and the green skin. So superheroes lend themselves to action figures and other forms of merchandise in a way that perhaps few other characters do. I think that's why we see so many action figures, and that's why we see so many merchandise, and it's why we see these studios gravitate towards superheroes.
Okay. Here's another question also directed to Liam. However, I also want to get, I think, the general view of this question from Prof. Admin and also from Dr. Zain. Okay. The question is, I want to ask a question. Why are there so many American superheroes? Yeah, Captain America, and then also Iron Man, Batman, Superman. Does it have anything to do with the American culture itself? What is your opinion? Okay, maybe we can start from Prof. Adwin. Yeah, Prof. Adwin.
Okay. So basically, I think was it Stuart Hall? I think she said that colonialization is kind of replaced by then globalization, and the center of what's called civilization is no longer in England, but is in Hollywood. So it's Hollywood that rules what values are we going to expose to, because for example, I missed it. And what does superhero do? Superhero actually represent values, and superhero seems to know what's wrong and she knows what to do. Yeah. But in terms of the Hollywood, because it has now become kind of the center of civilization, and we are all looking at that, we will kind of see it as the center, then it becomes, we are looking at American superheroes as the kind of prototype. Of course it is wrong, because I also told that we have a lot of different superheroes in our Indonesian culture. So I think that's it, because globalization and the information, it's going like the media, through the mediascape, so it's everywhere, kind of we are exposed to that. And I think that's my answer.
Okay. Now we are calling for Pak Zain. Hello, Pak Zain.
Hello. Yes, I think I better leave this question to the experts of superheroes to answer this question. But if it's something on translation, I would. So I think, yeah, I think Professor Aquarini, yeah, had a very good point. Yeah, it's all about you know, the source of values and what kind of values you're trying to promote. And she was talking about the Hollywood values. Yeah, but I would be interested also to hear from the other expert, Dr. Liam, that I will let him answer the question.
Okay. Okay, Liam, please.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, superheroes, and I briefly talked about it in my presentation, really emerged in the 1930s in America. So this was the era of massive urban expansion of skyscrapers and machine guns and express trains. And the older heroic types, which were measured by the natural world, seemed poorly suited to these new challenges. So if you think of Superman, he is the man of tomorrow, the man of steel. He can leap a building in a single bound. He can faster than a locomotive. He's measured by the machine age, not by the natural world. Now, America lacked an obvious folkloric tradition. And when I talk about America, I mean about the United States of America. But they gravitate around the gunfighter nation, the idea of an individual who will defend a community that through cowardice or incompetence cannot defend itself. And that was traditionally the Western gunfighter. But the Western gunfighter moving into the 1930s, who primarily lived in an agrarian landscape, was ill-suited to the machine age, to modern urban centers and the difficulties of gridlock and large urban centers. So what the superhero is a update of the vigilante archetype of the Western gunfighter, but to meet the challenges of the machine age, the modern urban city. So I think that's why you saw so many superheroes in America, and I think that's why they emerged in unprecedented numbers between 1930 and the early 1960s.
Okay. I think the rest of the question are still directed to Liam, yeah? So we still have some more question from Liam, for Liam. Okay, hold on. Oh, yeah,
There's some questions about Wonder Woman for others. So.
Yeah, I see. Okay. It is addressed to Prof. Admin. I am Arielia from Universitas Katolik Widya Mandala, Surabaya. I'd like to question about Diana's figure in Wonder Woman. In Diana's figure, it seems like it is inspired by Greek mythological goddess. Do you think that the characteristic of this Greek mythological goddess also typical feminism perspective? Okay, Prof. Admin, please.
I think to say a feminist perspective in general means the ideology that sees there is inequality among men and women. That's the first one. And I think feminist works in different local contexts as well, like different contexts. And when Wonder Woman, William Moulton Marston, when he created Wonder Woman, she actually wanted to create a superhero whose weapon is love, you know, and the wife said, okay, make it a woman then, promise me. So superhero, there's a woman. So I think another thing, what name should, I don't know because I'm not him, but I was thinking maybe then we should kind of explore the already, like Professor Liam said, we have a lot of prototype of superheroes. We have goddesses, and I read Greek mythology when I was very young. And there are a lot of superheroes. So I think feminism can actually learn from that and derive from that these different types of women that we want to present. You know, we want that different superheroes, different goddesses that we want to represent us. In Indonesian local context, for example, Sri Asih of course come from Dewi Sri, which means the diva of the rice, you know, the diva, yeah, the goddess of the rice. Why diva? The goddesses of the rice. And so we find different superheroes. from what we have already known from Greek mythology, of course. And that's part of the feminist perspective, is actually to explore these different types of women who would represent more of women in a way that is more balanced and not as a subject, as agency. So I think it could be, I don't know, because I'm not really Marston, but maybe it also comes, but actually researchers on Wonder Woman agrees that it comes from Diana, the mythology, the goddess in mythology. But unless we know he said that, then we would say that's what he wanted.
Okay, Prof. Adwin. Oh, we still have question from Liam. Okay. Dear Dr. Liam, my name is Marcel from Universitas Jenderal Sudirman. I would like to ask about the anti-hero character. So it's like Netflix, the Punisher, or the boys have protagonists that definitely does not come off as heroic or good, yet still many people love to invest their time to watch them. What do you think is the allure of the anti-hero character? Perhaps it looks like Lucifer, right? Lucifer in Netflix. Okay.
Yeah, so I think when we think about genres and popular trends, they tend to be cyclical. And so there's a kind of a slightly evolutionary view of genres, that they go through a period of uncertainty and then a kind of classical stage of archetypal expression. And then audiences become very familiar with the genre, arguably tired of the genre, and there's a need to subvert expectations and offer a variation on the type. So if you think of the period from, say, 2000, when X-Men was released and Spider-Man 2002, up to kind of 2010, most of the superheroes tended to be unambiguously good guys. They were, eventually those genre conventions not only become familiar, but they become cliche. And there's a desire on the part of the audience to see those subverted. And so the recent success of superhero satires like Deadpool, as well as anti-heroic models such as The Boys and also The Punisher, is a desire to see a variation on the type. And so we're in that stage now where superheroes are everywhere. The market is saturated across page and screen, and there's a need on the part of the creators to offer a variation on the model. And I think that's where these anti-heroic types are coming from. And I think our almost apathy with superheroes is why we seek out some variation on the type.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Next, we move to Prof. Adwin. Okay, the question comes from Ririn Kurniati Trisnawati. Okay, this is Ketua Panitia, ya. It is addressed to Prof. Adwin. Dear Prof. Adwin, what do you think of the femme fatale figures such as Harley Quinn, Joker's girlfriend? Does it perpetuate such sexualized heroine? Many thanks, Prof.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Yeah, if you see, I have the picture of Harley Quinn, and she's still very sexualized, you know, despite the fact she's femme fatale. This is like anti-hero even. So she's still wearing very short, what we said, celana gemes, yeah, with crop shirt, very sexualized, big breasted, small waist, nice long legs. But what I see in Harley Quinn is she's wearing tattoos. You know, she doesn't go with this normative kind of beauty, but at the same time she's still very sexualized. And I think this is like the superhero. People working in superhero cannot resist themselves of putting women as sexy or sexualized. You know, you can be bad, but you still have to be sexual. You can be whatever, you know, but still sexual. So this is something that I think is still prevalent in superhero genre. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I think this is the last question. Yeah, it comes from Muhammad Isa Pramana from Telkom University. A question to all honorable speakers. Hello, Pak Zain. What do you think about dual identity, alter ego, or secret identity in superhero genre? What is the context behind this? Why did the superhero always have secret identity at first? What are contexts? What era context is there? For example, in Zorro, Phantom, and Batman, Iron Man at first. And is it true that no, the concept of a secret identity is out of date? We see most superheroes today more often unmasked in public and are generally known. Thank you. I think superhero today is still wearing masks, yeah, especially in this pandemic era, yeah. We still need masks. Okay, this question is addressed to all honorable keynote speakers. Liam, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, the secret identity or the transformation from a civilian to a superhero is one of the things that's unique about the superhero, or at least, if not unique, sets it apart from other heroic types. But again, there's a long tradition of this. The question asker points to Zorro and other examples like Scarlet Pimpernel that would sort of predate the classical superhero. I think the appeal from the perspective of the writers is that you get a character who it can be relatable to your intended reader, which is the civilian identity, and then you still get to enjoy the high-flying adventure of the heroic type. So whether it's Peter Parker struggling to get a girlfriend, or Diana Prince struggling in her job, or whether it's, you think of, say, Billy Batson, who only has to say the word Shazam, and then he becomes Captain Marvel. Well, that was sort of the wish dream of a lot of comic book readers, who were young boys who imagined if they could find the right magic word or find the right magic potion or get involved in the right laboratory experiment gone wrong, they too could become superheroes. So that's very appealing. But I think your question asker is correct in saying that the superhero secret identity, particularly in the movies, is becoming less a feature of the characters. So in the Marvel movies, for instance, everybody knows that Tony Stark is Iron Man, and everybody knows that Steve Rogers is Captain America. And I think it points to a professionalization of the superhero. Following particularly 9/11 and the War on Terror, superheroes very much reflect the times in which they were produced, and a lot of superheroes became involved with the military. So even in the Marvel movies, in it's SHIELD, this espionage organization that funds and directs the activity of the superheroes. And so in a way, the idea of being individual operators with their own secret identities is faintly absurd when they work for the government or deputized in some way. And so I think in recent years, that kind of professionalization of the superhero as almost like a job has kind of chipped away at that old individual dichotomy of the superhero who's secretly a newspaper reporter or a nurse or whatever they might be.
Okay, Prof. Admin?
Yeah, I was just watching Supergirl a few days ago in Netflix, and Supergirl was still she was still a secret at the time. She knew her power, but she was not exposing herself to the public until one specific time. She kind of think it would be fun to reveal herself as Supergirl, and I kind of like it. She revealed herself as Supergirl, and then she got injured, and she was taken by her sister. She was telling her sister that she was going to expose herself and etc. But she was injured or something, and she got caught, and by this government agency that was trying to identify aliens, and Supergirl is an alien, and her sister turned out, because she was kind of adopted and taken care of by the human on Earth, her sister said, you are endangering yourself, because the moment your identity is revealed, you can be targeted. And this is something also which I think some of the superheroes are trying hard to kind of conceal their identity, because if they know, for example, Clark Kent is Superman, and some enemies of Superman don't like Superman, of course, and they could target Lois Lane, for example. If Clark Kent, I mean, this for the plot's sake, it's something that might come into our mind. And I learned kind of that from Supergirl, and I realized, yes, if I am known as something and I would be targeted, and they cannot target me, they would target people around me. Of course, there is other issues such as legal issues. For example, that's why once we have this dark justice, I don't know, that shows my age, dark justice in the television, and because he's a judge, he has to be just in the courtroom, but sometimes the legal proceedings is not enough. So he had to go on the street and do his own justice, or the dark justice. I think that's the thing, because there is also other issues that for the plot's sake, the legal ramification.
Dual identity.
Yeah,
okay. Hello, Pak Zain. We still have one last question from Ambita Dianingrum, Jenderal Sudirman University. Dear Dr. Zain, in the context of translator as superhero, what equipment should a translator have to transfer message in intercultural context? Okay, here you are.
Okay, so in the context of translator as superhero, what equipment should a translator have to transfer message in intercultural context? I think the question itself gives an answer, which is cultural knowledge. I don't think you should use Google Translate as a tool in this context, but I think what you need is sufficient background cultural knowledge in translating any text. Okay, because when you're translating a text, you are not only transferring something linguistically, but you're transferring a linguistic item across cultures, because the only way readers can make sense out of a text is through the lens of culture. So culture is vital in any translation activity, and especially if we're translating something which is deeply rooted in the source culture, in this sense, the superhero character or icon, which is deeply rooted in a source culture. So if you want to translate that or translate the message into another culture, I mean, the cultural parameters of the target language, of the target text that you're going to produce has to be taken into consideration seriously. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Zain. Yeah, I hope it does answer the question. Okay, everyone, I think we have come to the final stage of this occasion. Yeah, I will not make any notes, yeah, as I'm sure we have learned lots of things from our outstanding keynote speaker. So who is superhero? Superhero can be your mother, your father, your colleague, your boss, even your friend. And most of all, the superhero is you. But one thing to remember, I want to highlight here, just what Uncle Ben told to Peter Parker in Marvel Spider-Man. With great powers come great responsibility. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Professor Liam.
Thank you all. It was great. Thank you for all the great questions. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to be part of the conference.
Photo session, dear everyone. So please open your camera. Who will count?
You.
Me? Okay, slide 1. 1, 2, 3. Okay, slide 2. 1. Okay. Ready, set, Go. Slide 3. Ready, set. Okay, open your camera. Go. Slide 4. Okay. Slide 5.